challenging times. In these times, employee well-being has been of vital importance to keep businesses afloat. Even though the term has gained more importance in current times, it has played a key role in making organizations more efficient from a very long time. When we speak of employee well-being, there appears to be an ambiguity in the term. When people hear of the employee well-being, it is often mixed with employee wellness. Every workspace has an extensive wellness plan for their employees. However, on more research, we can observe that employee well-being and employee wellness, although interlinked, have two separate meanings, and this distinction between the two terms is of essential importance. Employee wellness is a commonly used term relating to the health benefits provided by companies for their employees. It is mostly concerned with the physical health and the mental health of the employee. Employee well-being, on the other hand, is concerned with the overall work-life balance of the employee. It consists of a lot of aspects of the employee's work life and is an overall determinant of the employee's job satisfaction.
Employee well-being consists of four main components. There is financial well-being, which consists of areas where the financial security of the employee can be improved. This is done through education on proper investment plans, introducing savings plans, and even retirement planning. There is physical well-being, which is health benefits and ensuring that the aspects of the physical working environment are safe. This involves ergonomics, fire safety, first aid, etc. The emotional well-being of employees is not just therapy sessions, resilience training, parental leaves, and even programs to deal with chronic illnesses. Lastly, there is social well-being of an employee. This orbits around the concept of awakening empathy and involvement, giving the employees the sense of satisfaction from their work. It's achieved by increasing the engagement and participation of employees in decision-making and social recognition through the workplace culture. To apprehend the relevance of employee well-being, we try to understand how it affected the overall performance of an employee. Studies showed that mental health is the most common cause of long-term absence and was responsible for 59% of such unplanned absences. 8 out of 10 employees feel like their financial health is severely impacted, and as a result, the productivity at work is getting affected too. Physical health accounted for more than 84% of direct effects on productivity loss. And in organizations with low employee engagement scores too, they experience 18% lower productivity.
What are the benefits of a good employee well-being program? When all aspects of employee well-being are fulfilled, the employees generally have better morale. They also see an improvement in the physical and the mental health. They are less prone to taking time off of work. This also includes the lowering of presenteeism or working when unwell. Hence, they become more productive in their day-to-day activities. The combination of these two ensures a lighter workload. Deadlines are now easier to meet. Employees are generally happier in the workplace, which leads to retention as well as recruitment of top talent. All of this eventually leads to organizational efficiency.
So why has it become a necessity, especially in the current scenario? COVID-19 has changed the dynamics of the traditional workspace unexpectedly. A study showed 91% of employees during this time reported experiencing moderate to extreme stress. Although employees are working from home, their well-being has been limited to certain aspects. A 69% claim that this is the most stressful period of their entire careers. Cases of stress, depression, anxiety are being reported more than ever. Another 62% reported losing out at least 1 hour a day in productivity due to COVID-19 related stress, with 32% of this cohort losing more than 2 hours a day. Looking at the organizational point of view too, 83% of companies said they may have to reevaluate their employee well-being strategy altogether.
What are the issues being faced by employees leading to such high levels of stress? There is the communication gap. In a virtual mode of working, there is a huge communication gap between most of the employees. Their work-life balance has also reduced considerably. Some employees feel marginalized in this new way of working. Responsibilities seem ambiguous. Employees are not clear on their predefined responsibilities. Despite being home, they take less breaks from work. Some employees are still not convinced that virtual support can be as effective as in person support. Unemployment looms over most employees in the current job climate, leading to more stress. So, what is being done about it? For the purpose of the study, we spoke to HRs across various domains to try to understand the initiatives that are being taken to lessen the stress burden on their employees. There are take a break activities wherein employees are encouraged to take half-an-hour breaks to engage daily with their other co-workers. Health initiatives such as push-up challenges or plank challenges help keep the employees physically active. Open forums help employees put their views or suggestions on practices being employed and what can be improved. Therapy sessions are conducted by companies. Mental health professionals are hired for the same. Innovative hobby workshops are being conducted, such as guitar classes or haircut workshops. There are a number of challenges faced by the employers as well. HRs themselves are burdened by mental health issues. However, they have to focus on putting their employees first. There is a huge increase in the workload of the HRs, especially in these times. They have lost a sense of personal connect with the employees. They cannot gauge the employee body language by talking to them about their issues. Online activities are not as engaging as in person activities. HRs have to keep innovating to keep them engaged.
We've seen how it is equally overwhelming for the employer as each employee needs something different. Every individual will have a different set of challenges they are facing. While all employees' well being is affected by the same four factors, that is, mental, physical, financial, and social, the balance of these elements, however, will vary from person to person. There are individuals who have strong financial wellness, but the productivity is affected because their physical well being is lacking. There are others who are struggling with their mental well being, and as a result, their physical and financial well being takes a hit too. So, to understand how companies were adapting during these unprecedented times, we looked at the organizations who are performing exceptionally well in this scenario. They have paved the way for other companies to use data analytics to tackle this problem head on by human capital management, introducing more personalized benefit programs for the employees. They are creating more diverse and inclusive workspaces using HR technology. This is helping these companies to get their employees more accustomed to this virtual mode of support, which has also increased the employee adoption of the technologies altogether. However, studies showed that globally, 31% of companies are still not using any data analytics to drive their corporate well-being strategy. And in India, this number is most likely to be on the higher side. The road ahead here is this one struggle: sustainability of these solutions. To help employees thrive through this fast and continually changing environment, employees need to be emotionally engaged with the values of the organization. But even when such a situation ceases to exist, things won't go back to normality in a day. So the solution is resilience training through better communication, compassionate engagement, better work culture, and even collaborations. The end goal here is not just a process to make sure productivity is not affected during unprecedented times, but on the lines of how they can evolve for the future landscape. Because Darwin said, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one most adaptable to change. These challenging times have exposed gaps in the most valuable resource of the global economy, its human capital. There are few things humans have no control over, no matter how advanced we get or how much planning is put in. Employees want to be healthy and happy at work. The need of the hour is to provide a more holistic work environment for them, not just through traditional methods, but also through new age proactive solutions. As Steve Wayne rightly said, and I quote, human resource isn't a thing we do, it's a thing that runs our business. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was an amazing presentation, Aishwarya and Pari. We'll just wait for a couple of more minutes and let the guests join.
Till that time, maybe all of you can check your emails. The form for the questions link has been floated. Okay, please go through the email and choose your question carefully. The limit of questions on the form is set. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rahul. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Arun, sir. Good evening, Arun.
Am I a bit early?
No, no.
Just on time.
Good evening, everyone. This is Deepa here.
Good evening,
Hello,
Deepa. How-
Deepa.
I'm good. How
Hi,
are you?
Deepa. Hi, Deepa. Good evening.
Hi, Arun. Good to see you again.
See you too.
Good evening, Arun. We are not met.
Hi, sorry, I'm Arun and I head HR for Barclays in India. Good to meet you.
Yes, I've seen your profile. Impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Santosh.
Good evening, Dr. Santosh. Welcome.
Dr. Santosh, good evening.
Good evening, Arun. Good evening, Deepa.
We've got Deepa and yourself, and we'll wait for Suchi and Bhavya to join in.
Sure.
Hi, Dr. Santosh. Good to see
Hi,
you.
hi. Hi, hi. How are you doing?
All well. Hope you're good too.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Deepa, are you in Jamshedpur or where?
I'm in Jamshedpur, Nagraja.
And where is SV?
Sanjay is also in Jamshedpur.
Okay, I thought it was in Pune or Bombay, right?
He was, but as soon as the domestic flights opened up, he came to Jamshedpur.
Okay.
How has been the
Yes.
first day?
Just waiting for Suchismita and Divya. So yes, sir. Arun, first day was great. Uh, we started off with the discussion and we had the quick Q&A in the end as well. So yeah, the students were pretty happy with the way the discussion went, and I'm sure today we'll gain even more insights.
I'm sure, I'm sure.
Is it
I'm
possible?
on. Hi, Arun.
Hi, Suchi.
Hi.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Natarajan. Thank you so much for having us.
No, we should thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure to interact with students because they are the future. It's always good to interact with them.
And
So, Rahul, yesterday we spoke about something about casual wear. Was that not acceptable?
You have put me in a very awkward situation now.
see, you are going to be live on, streamed on, right away, I think you are live on YouTube, and CNBC is going to stream you. So that is why, I just told them to be, a little bit careful in terms of how we dress.
Right.
And it is extremely hot here,
I know.
with the suit. So
I can imagine. All of you must be sweating.
Yeah.
yes, the AC is there. Okay, but if I turn the fan on, it creates that static noise. So I just decided not to have it today. So
Right.
Hi everyone, this is Bhavya here.
hi, good evening.
Yeah.
Good evening, Bhavya.
Hi, Rahul.
Hi. So all of the panelists are here. Let's begin quickly. Sukangshi.
Yeah. So I'll just go ahead. Jack Welch, who led GE to an extraordinary corporate prosperity and became the most influential businessman of his times, once said, if you pick the right people and give them the opportunity to spread their wings and put compensation as a carrier behind it, you almost don't have to manage them. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Respected Director Sir, our esteemed guests, faculty members, and all the students of Indian Institute of Management Amritsar. I, Sukangshi Jain and Rahul Taide would like to welcome all of you to the 5th edition of Yukti', the annual HR Conclave of IIM Amritsar. Learning has always been a force that powers the paddle of success moving forward. And what could be a better platform for all the brightest minds to come and enrich the students with their epitome of experiences?
Management is efficiency in climbing the ladder of success. Leadership determines whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. We are fortunate to have such a leader to guide us, our director, Sir Professor Nagarajan Navamurthy. I would now request you, sir, to kindly address this August gathering.
Thank you, Rahul. Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to address all of you on the second session of the Yukti event of 2020. During the past year, IIM Amritsar has grown tremendously. We increased our student batch from 250 to 375 this year in all. We also introduced a new PhD program this year. We have more programs ready to be rolled out next year with specialization in human resource management, business analytics, and also an executive MBA, which will be on VC mode/hybrid mode. We are also in talks with several corporates. In fact, by the end of this month, we are going to roll out our first corporate long duration executive certificate program with one of the public sector institutions in India. Having said that, IIM Amritsar focuses on providing a holistic education. Being a business school, education is not complete unless it is complemented by interaction with the industry. To that extent, our industry interaction cell, which is a student-driven body, has taken up this initiative to have this Yukti event, which is just the first of the event. We have much more to come. One of the defining features of this event is that it is going to be partnered with CNBC 80. And the second defining event is that our students, mainly the MBA 06 batch, they just started the class on August 3rd. And this event is within 5 days of their joining the program. Somebody mentioned earlier about teamwork and the human interaction. What the industry interaction cell has really shown us is that they are truly leaders of the future. Only they could have pulled off this type of event with such a short notice, and not only that, they did it virtually. We have about 75 girls this year, which is a huge increase in our diversity index. In addition, we have students from about 23 different states. So being dispersed across the country, they still manage to coordinate among themselves and attend their classes the first week and still make this a very, very successful event. I want to thank all the panelists, for joining us. We had a very wonderful session yesterday, and I hope that today's sessions also will be similarly very enriching and sharing of knowledge with our students will take them towards that holistic education which we are really trying to adopt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your kind thoughts and enlightening words. I'm sure MBA 06 and MBA 05 as well will draw some inspiration. Without further ado, I would like to steer the conclave towards the discussion on the theme by introducing today's guests. We have Mr. Arun, who is the head of HR India at Barclays, Ms. Bhavya, HR Director at PepsiCo, We have Ms. Deepa Verma, Chief HRM at Tata Steel, Dr. Santosh Fulpagar, who is the Head Talent Acquisition, Learning and Development at CG Power, and Ms. Suchismita Burman, CHRO at ITC Infotech. The theme for today's discussion is employee well-being, a necessity in challenging times. Now, I request Mr. Arun to moderate the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the warm welcome. I think it's an absolute pleasure to be with this with the students and staff of IIM Amritsar, and a warm welcome to the PGP 06 batch. Doing this in the first week is I'm sure a Herculean task. So thank you very much, fellow panelists. And my role today is to get the best out of all of you. And I have no doubts that it's going to be fantastic. So I'm going to start with just a teaser around the topic, and maybe start with Suchi to just say, what does well-being mean to you personally? And then once you finish, I'd try to kind of open it up to other panelists to kind of have their take, because it's quite a broad topic. Suchi, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much. And first of all, I would echo everything that you said. And great comment. I mean, honestly, what I heard, that doing this within 5 days of actually starting of the sessions, all of you should feel very proud of yourselves, right? Because it just shows your ability to get to an outcome with a sense of direction. So congratulations to all of you on that. Now, coming back to your question, right, Arun, I think like many of us, this topic is fairly personal, right? And I'll tell you why, and I'll start possibly with a story, right? I grew up in a steel township. I grew up in Durgapur, right? Now, what happens is when you grow up in an environment where it's always about saying, how well are you doing in life, right? What's your benchmark of success, right? That's how you necessarily start pivoting your sense of success. And in many ways, that sense of success also becomes a way of saying, are you necessarily, it's also a symbol of acceptance, right? Either socially or within the family environment as well. And what happens in situations like this is you possibly take that in your experiences in life. But in not all circumstances do you always win, correct? Now, when I left home at the age of 15 to study in Pune, and I was in a hostel, which is a very different environment, very different culture, very different food habits, very different set of people, right? When we started working, again, it required certain amount of sensitization as well. Now, as you go through different experiences in life, and in my personal environment, I have been through pretty traumatizing experiences as well, right? Where I have seen people suffer, I have seen people go through situations which required a lot of attention. What I realized is well-being is actually a way of life, right? And as a result, I say that it's a very personal thing, because what I feel is if my experiences, right, the way I have dealt with it in our generation, Arun, you will appreciate the sensitization that we have today was not there. So as a result, many times you have actually gone through situations based on your personal experiences and what is it that you could do better. And my goal in life today is, in my role, if I can make that a journey for others, because there'll be so many other people like you and me, or a lot of us, right? How do you make that a common mission for the organization or the community at large is what well-being means to me.
Thank you, Suchi, and I'm sure we've all heard a lot about the jokes around being married to the job and managing spouses. So, yes. I just wanted to transition to other panelists. Maybe Bhavya, anything
Sure.
you'd like to add to that?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Arun. And exactly, what both of you have said. Firstly, welcome to this new batch. And I actually have to say, different from what Arun and Suchi mentioned, I'm not at all surprised that this new batch of people have just come in and managed to pull off this huge event. I think it's absolutely expected of this generation. They're like, from the word go, they're like ready to do great things. So many congratulations on this huge feat, and I think all of you are meant to do great things, and very, very happy to be here. On wellness specifically, well-being specifically, I personally think it's, for me, it's a state in which I'm comfortable. I feel healthy in all dimensions, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, all of that. And then at the end of the day, whether or not I feel happy about it. And hence, I completely agree that it's extremely personal. Especially with the kind of changes that are happening in the social norms, right? The way men and women, if I just look at diversity as one of the differentiators, men and women are looking at their roles within the home as well as within the society, and how that is changing over a period of time. I think well-being, linked to that, changes drastically, in the sense that earlier people thought, and within organizations we assumed, that when you looked at policies like sabbatical, when people want to take time off work, that was limited to women wanting to take time off work because they wanted to manage balance work and life. But that's not true. In fact, within PepsiCo, many years back, when we had introduced the sabbatical policy, there were many more men at that point in time taking sabbaticals compared to women, because they felt that they wanted to explore dimensions of their life which they had not got time to do. So just double underlining on the fact that it's an extremely personal definition that everybody has. And for me, I look at it as a state when I personally feel comfortable, and as a result of that, happy. So that's the definition for me, Arun. Thanks.
Thank you, Bhavya. I think great learnings there in not setting the pace of our treadmill based on our neighbors, so that it is intensely personal. Thank you very much. Would any of the other panelists like to add?
So Arun, just like to come in over here, and I would basically like to talk about what our founder, Mr. Jamshedji Tata, had to say about employee well-being. And I'd like to just read out his quotation. And he said that we do not claim to be more unselfish, more generous, or more philanthropic than other people, but we think that we started on sound and straightforward business principles, considering the interest of the shareholders of our own as our own, and the health and the well-being of the employees as a sure foundation of our success. So way back in the early 1900s, when Mr. Jamshedji Tata thought about putting up the steel plant in Jamshedpur, his thoughts at that point of time really echoes the ethos and philosophy of our organization. And we not only talk about the well-being of our people, but we also talk about the well-being of our shareholders and all the external and internal stakeholders that we have within, around the city of Jamshedpur, around all the locations that we have our operations in. And for us, well-being is a very all-encompassing concept. We look after the well-being of our own people within the organization. We look after the community around us. And that has been one of the reasons why we have been able to survive in this kind of environment for over 100 years now. And possibly that is the cornerstone and the foundation of our philosophy at Tata's. So I think that just covers my take on that.
Thank you very much. He was certainly an inspiration before it became fashionable throughout the world. Thank you very much. And anything from you, Dr. Santosh?
Yes, thank you, Arun. First of all, hearty congratulations to batch 06. Congratulations on getting admission in IIM Amritsar. I think it is one of the esteemed institute of this country. And I'm very glad to be here to interact with the bright minds of our country. So thank you, Professor Nagarajan. Thank you, IIM Amritsar, for inviting me here. So as a question of employee well-being, it reminds me a story. It's a story told by one of my friend. He was telling me that he was working in an organization, and just like you guys are currently in MBA. So let's assume after 15, 20 years after passing from IIM, this guy also, let's say after 15, 20 years from IIM, was in a very good position in this company. And he decided to actually, look for other opportunities, and he got an opportunity which maybe 1 or 2 designation better than the current designation, better salary, maybe 50, 60, 100% increment than the current job. And he started discussing that, we need to now relocate to another location with his family members. But family members actually, told him, you cannot leave this company. Even if you are getting a better designation, better salary, you cannot leave this company. They ask this employee, this guy who has completed 15, 20 years after IIM, he asked his family members, why don't you want to shift from this location? They said, your company takes care of your housing, our education of our children, it takes care of our all physical requirements, it takes care of our all mental requirements, it takes care of our emotional spiritual requirements. What else do we want in our life? We actually go abroad for our vacation, everything is being taken care by this organization. What else do you want in life? And we are very, very comfortable, we cannot leave this organization. And they force that employee to actually forego the opportunity which was much higher in terms of the salary and designation. So that is, I think, for me is a well-being, when your family members also get involved in the organization's actions, which are actually not only helping that employee to grow, but also family members to also grow in their own personal life, and not only financially, but also non-financial parameters.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. I think the message overall is organizations can have an impact beyond the individual employee into the families and the communities. I want to quickly move into, let's say, the context today, right? I think from the third week of March, it's more than 4 months now with the onset of the pandemic, at least in India, and maybe a bit longer in other parts of the world. It's impacted the well-being of organizations and individuals in very different ways. And I'm conscious I'm using the word impacted because there have been positive impacts of this as well. So I want to maybe start with you, Dr. Santosh, and then move on to others to see, would you like to kind of share one or two, let's say, the most significant impact that, let's say, the fallouts of COVID has had on your organization and for your employees in particular?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this is not only about the financial, but also the emotional, mental, physical well-being of our employees. And this pandemic hit the country or the globe, it also affected the well-being of our employees. We are a manufacturing organization. And as a manufacturing organization, you may be aware that, during the lockdown, even the operations were closed for more than a month. And I'm sure this must be a story for other organizations also. And as a manufacturing organization or any business has a fixed cost as well as the variable cost. Variable cost is there only when the operations are on, but the fixed cost continues. And because of non-operations, it seriously impacted the cash flow of the organization. It seriously impacted some of the fixed cost component for the organization. Slowly, how did we handle this? Slowly, I think with the unlock, phase-wise, we actually started our operations. And once we started operation, it was not only we who can start the operation, because any business will require other stakeholders. You need customers, you need suppliers, you need transporters. So even if you are on, it doesn't mean that the entire world is on. So entire ecosystem is required for your business to run. So there were serious and severe challenges for any business like us. How did we handle this? It was a three-pronged approach, I must tell you. One is actually creating the trust among the employees. So senior management, senior leadership team reached out to the employees and conveyed to them that we are together. This is a pandemic which has hit, but don't worry, we will actually pass it through. Second, it's providing the clarity to the employees in terms of the expectation. So our EHS head, Mr. Yukti'20, along with the senior leaders of the organization, it was actually a team effort. We created a lot of SOPs to actually tell what can be done, what cannot be done when we are actually opening the operations, not only in our manufacturing operations, but also sales offices, corporate offices, all the guidelines were followed and senior leaders supported in this. And the third thing is actually creating the energy in the organization. See, pandemic is not in our control, but there are many actions which are in our control. And that is what was communicated to the employees, leaders, managers of the organization, that all those actions which are in our control, let us take those right action so that the health and the safety of our employees is given the highest priority while conducting the business.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Santosh. And any other insights? I'd love to understand if there are positive takeouts on both organizations and employees.
So Arun, I'd like to talk about the way the situation impacted us And we were, ours is an industry which we cannot stop at any point of time. It's a process industry, and you can know at no point of time can you stop your operations. So the operations have to go on no matter what happens. So that is a huge challenge for us, and we had to keep our employees coming in. We, of course, first of all, started reducing the number of people who would come into the organization. Only essential operations were continued. At the same time, we collaborated with the local authorities, the local district and government authorities, so that our contract workforce could also come in and be in a situation to contribute to the production. So that was something which a huge amount of collaboration happened at the local level. Secondly, unimaginable amount of digitization took place in the organization. It was beyond anybody's imagination that this kind of digitization can happen. And all the support services were working out of home. Business was as usual, except that there was no, the market conditions were very grave and extremely critical. And we had almost no sales for some period of time, which was a very difficult patch for us. But business went on as usual. A huge amount of digitalization. We had actually, we never imagined that people could work. The IT, the finance department, the supply chain department, everybody was working out of home. And it was absolutely seamless. There was no problem at all. And this is a huge mindset change for everybody, because this was not thought of ever. Everybody thought the only way you can work is to go to office and get your work done. You cannot sit at home and do work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think the extent to which collaboration and digitization was accelerated in the pandemic has been a story across most organizations. And I think one of the great positive spins out of this situation has been speed. And I know Suchi has been waiting to share something. Suchi, over to you.
Thanks, Arun. I think you talked about speed. It's so important, and I have been talking about this wherever I can, because it's more speed or execution, elegance, rather than just getting to a perfect solution, right? And for the benefit of the students, I think what we need to appreciate, Arun, to your point, right? I think when you think about well-being, or when you think about an organization, right, there are three aspects to it. One is the work experience in itself, which is very individual-centric, right? The other is how are individuals actually experiencing the organization, correct? And how each of the employees, so if you have employees who have just come from the college and has entered the organization, how they will experience this change is very different from people who come with a lot of experience and have been through some of these situations, correct? So possibly the biggest thing that organizations are struggling with and actually putting a lot of attention on is how do you necessarily cover the gap of the lack of a social fabric, right? Where is that sense of belongingness that you're actually working on? Because that's what binds that work experience, the organization experience, right? Now, in the event where everybody is working from home, how do you build those networks? How do you fall back and lean on each other is possibly one of the things that all organizations are working together to find its own way to really look at that situation of lack of organization or the social fabric, and how do you necessarily work around that? So that would definitely be something around, I would say, all organizations are going through.
Thank you, Suchi. And Bhavya, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about the whole global impact of it a little later in the debate. But just on this, I think one of the positives, while all of us have spoken about well-being and how that's been impacted mostly in a negative way. But if I look at the positive of it, right? So if I look at global working groups, right? So I, sitting in India today, can attend any meeting across the globe, without having the need to travel at all. In a past world where you would have prioritized the number of people, who would attend certain critical meetings because they had to travel all the way and everybody was being there, has changed drastically. And if I just extend that a bit to say today's discussion, right? We're doing this on a Sunday. So maybe in a regular in a regular year where nothing had changed, this may have been a face-to-face discussion, right? Where each of us may have asked ourselves if we actually want to travel all the way to go there, spend the full Sunday, and then do this. Whereas today, all of us are very comfortable sitting in our house. We will give this 2 hours, 3 hours, and still attend it. I think the exact same thing applies to organizations, and that has been a huge positive shift for employees who are located everywhere. And within PepsiCo, just to take an example, and frankly, I am an example myself, because we have a concept which is called location free. So, like, I am a location free employee, and what that means is that my job ideally should be based in Dubai, but because my life stage is such and I did not want to relocate to Dubai, I sit here and I manage the regions of Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. And just coming to the point on this, so how it works is that today, if I look at it, everybody is pretty much working like that. So we have employees who were based in Dubai, but they were from Ireland, so they've gone back to their hometown and are working from there. So if I look at one of the positive impacts of this whole work from home scenario has been that you can pretty much be anywhere and be working for the organization, and the organization and everybody in it has opened their eyes to this reality. So I think that's the positive spin I would want to give the debate.
Thank you, Bhavya. I think all very interesting insights. And I think the key takeout is that there is no denying the community health challenge and the economic challenge that has been brought about by COVID. But if you have the eye to look for green shoots, if you have the eye to look at this as an opportunity to leapfrog ahead of your competition to serve your customers, you can find those opportunities and really thrive on that. So thank you, everyone. I want to just quickly move saying that one is about impact that the COVID situation has had on the mainstream. The second is the impact that it has on relatively more marginalized sections of our society, right? And we can't kind of debate the fact that there are more marginalized sections of our society that we are a part of, whether in India or globally. Maybe I want to start with Deepa on this and say, can you share some specific challenges that have been faced by, I don't know, maybe it's women, people who have carrying responsibilities, people who are migrant labor, about any specific challenges that your organization witnessed and how it responded to some of these challenges. Deepa?
Sure, thanks, Arun. I'd like to share a couple of examples. And first of all, I'd like to talk about how it has impacted the women working in the organization. We have, as you know, most of our locations have, we are also responsible for running hospitals in all our locations because many of our locations are in very remote places. So the employees of the hospital, many of them are nurses, they are doctors, and they were working around the clock when this pandemic started. One of the things the first initiative that we took was that all expecting mothers who were working in these areas, especially when they were exposed to a very high level of risk, we had asked them to be on special leave. They will not come to work, especially doctors and nurses, if they are expecting mothers, because you are actually exposing the unborn child also to a risk. And at the extent of running short of doctors and nurses, we still went ahead with that because that was something which was the first thing which came to our mind. And we had to make up that shortage through other means. And there was a lot of pressure on us to let them come to work, but let them be in a place where they would have minimum risk. Let them do duties where they would be exposed to very little risk. But that was a complete no-no from us, that cannot happen because it's very difficult. So all expecting mothers were not coming to work. And from day one, that is in the last week of March, from that day onwards, they are all on special leave. If they can do work from home, well and good. Otherwise, that's the way it is. That is number one. Talking of migrant labor, we have a lot of contract workforce working in our mines and other locations, which consists of migrant laborers. And when this situation came about, this pandemic came up, there were a lot of them who wanted to in a state of panic, wanted to go back to their native places. And there was a lot of, there's a kind of an exodus of people just going back to their villages and going back to their native places. And that was another situation where we faced, we did not stop them because we know it's a mental state that you're in turmoil at that point of time, and you need to be near your family. So there was a lot of outflow of people. Again, we made it up by either bringing down our production levels to a slightly lower level where we can manage with a lesser number of manpower, or we made it up through some other means. But we did not stop these people from going back. The other thing which our CSR department also did was to reach out to migrant laborers who are from the state of Jharkhand. They collaborated with the district authorities, and they had online counseling sessions with Jharkhand people, migrant labor from Jharkhand who were in Tamil Nadu, who were in Kerala, who were in Punjab. And they reached out to them, and they also asked them whether they needed help, if there's anything that we could do to bring them back home to their homes. So that was another initiative of our CSR department. So these are the three things I'd like to talk about.
Thank you. I think the India Inc. has gone a long way in managing some of the challenges. I know firms which fast-track clearing invoices for SMEs because they were the ones which had quite significant investments in contract labor. Firms which continued to pay wages for these sections, notwithstanding the economic question marks that they were going through themselves. So there is a lot of positive contributions from India Inc. Anything from the rest of panelists to add, please?
Arun, if you want, I can go next on this. Yeah. So as far as PepsiCo is concerned, I think, we've kind of very consciously, as soon as this pandemic happened, very quickly, we kind of devised a plan to look at holistic set of stakeholders. So whether it is, employees, consumers, customers, or communities. And on this level, I'll talk about two parts. One is communities, and then also on the employees. And I'll tell you what we did. So we've distributed across these geographies of Africa, Middle East, and, Asia. South Asia, actually, we've distributed more than 45 million meals across these geographies, along with PPE kits, along with any other requirements from a local country perspective. Apart from that, I think a very interesting initiative that happened with the India team, and fairly unique in itself, was the fact that all of us, everybody in India, we realized that with all of this online schooling happening, and knowing the infrastructure of India, and knowing specifically our front lines, and the level of technology that they have in their homes, we realized that most of them did not have laptops at home for their kids. So the India team, basically, many of the senior people, we have refurbished about 500 laptops. So we all exchanged our laptops, and they gave us new different laptops, and all the old laptops, they refurbished, and they are being given out to the frontline employees for use in their homes for their children's education. And this is one initiative which has garnered a lot of praise amongst employees, because they realize that this is something that they don't have, and all their children are stuck to mobile screens for school education. So I think this was one thing I wanted to highlight from a PepsiCo perspective.
Thank you very much. I think I can certainly resonate with that, because more than sharing laptops, sharing broadband width was a household challenge in many places. Thank you very much for sharing that, Bhavya. Anything from you, Suchi or Dr. Santosh? Dr. Santosh, you are on mute.
Yeah, Suchi can go ahead now.
Sorry. Suchi, do you have anything to add?
I would add one perspective which happens in the IT sector, right? See, when you look at distribution of work, we have work that is subcontracted out to contractors. Now, what happens in situations like that, the biggest risk is really about work distribution, right? And most of the subcontractors are not necessarily large players. And the first impact of organizations is really to look at your cost management, your predictability, all of that. And the organizations that get hit the most is really the subcontractors, right? So as a result, I think what we tried to do is to actually look at work predictability, at the same time, not necessarily marginalize them. So how do we make sure that your work composition is done in such a manner that you are able to see it from a principle of equitability, right? Be it a subcontractor, at the end of the day, it's their jobs, it's their employment as well. So that actually, and I think what you mentioned, Arun, the broadband part of it is such an important one, because as people started working from home, what we realized in an Indian environment, our homes are not designed to work from home, right?
Yep.
And it could be very simple things. It also leads to so many other issues. So for example, we were grappling with a situation where students have just come to Bangalore and they're actually working together in a PG, and now they're suddenly on Zoom calls and Teams calls, and there are people walking around the rooms and they get frustrated with the whole thing, saying, I can't even have my privacy to do my calls. So it's as simple as that. Or you could actually have families who don't necessarily have that social well-being to have a dedicated space to actually work from. So those are things, I think, which are real issues that this pandemic actually opened the organizations to, and was forcing us to address them. Right? It's not that we didn't know, but it was not necessarily impacting work as much. And because it's impacting work, because it's impacting predictability and productivity, organizations are taking a hard look as to say what policies, what systems, processes, well-being, and this forms part of well-being itself, that allows us to be an inclusive organization.
Thank you, Suchi. I think I can certainly see around me that a lot of organizations, including Barclays, have leapfrogged on the empathy quotient, demystifying the myths around the perfect mom, the perfect dad, and the perfect household. And I think these learnings are here to stay in the long term.
Right. On the Zoom calls, it's like a regular thing. You can see, you can always hear a pressure cooker going off, and that's perfectly okay. Right?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily hurry to say, oh, something is wrong. It's as simple as that. That acceptance of it is so much more higher.
Absolutely, and I think in a way, it's also brought the familial connect, especially in relatively more conservative organizations and industries, much closer because of the forced nature of the shared environment. But thank you very much. If I move towards a slightly more delicate topic, for no reason, it shouldn't be a delicate topic, but it is. Now, it's very fashionable to acknowledge physical well-being challenges, whether it is dieting, whether it is a solemn goal to lose weight or to eat better. But what I find is there is a broad social taboo around acknowledging mental health issues, right? It almost feels that it always exists somewhere else, but not in our shops, right? So I want to ask, how have your organizations helped destigmatize it? And if I may even add, if you're feeling comfortable, to add, what's the senior most person in your organization who has personally acknowledged a mental health challenge with everyone else? Maybe I can start with Bhavya and then move on to others. Sorry, I don't want you to get frozen, yeah?
No, thanks, Arun, for that question. And I think that's a very, very critical part of this whole discussion, mental health, because more often than not, and specifically being in India, I think culturally speaking, it's been a topic which is taboo. And I completely agree that, it's not a topic that we are very comfortable with discussing, specifically when it comes to ourselves and people we know. When it's about somebody else, we've probably reached that stage where we say, yes, we should talk about it. But, for people around us, it becomes very difficult. And I think in this domain, one of the things which is most important, as far as mental health is concerned, is authenticity and vulnerability of leaders themselves. And you mentioned it towards the end. I think culture is something that is built top down. What are the behaviors that are acceptable? What are the behaviors that are recognized? What are the informal norms that are, appreciated within the organization? Those are the critical aspects of culture. And leaders play a huge role in that, in terms of setting an example, in terms of clarifying expectations from people, in terms of acknowledging diversity and the fact that different people may have different needs and all of them are equally valid. and in terms of encouraging discussions. So to that extent, I think the role of the leader is very critical. The role of the leader to be able to talk about himself or herself as a person who is vulnerable, as a person who has challenges of their own, is very critical. And if I look at PepsiCo, itself, as well as other leaders that I've interacted with, I think through this time and even earlier, most of the leaders who are well respected, who are inspirational, are people who have been able to actually bring forward their own challenges also. And within PepsiCo, I mean, over the last 4 or 5 months that all of us have been going through these challenges, I've seen a variety of people who've actually, spoken about the challenges that they are facing, whether people who were in transit from one country to another and have gotten stuck, in just hotels. And that's happened with international relocations, that people have just been stuck in hotels with their full families in just a couple of rooms because of the pandemic. And then how frustrating that can be, that's one part of it. The other is just personally in the personal space, as that becomes limited and everybody is working from home, the kind of challenges that they have faced with their families, with their children schooling from home, with their spouses being at home, and everybody together having to manage all of the household chores. So I think this whole aspect of leaders themselves sharing with employees is very critical, and is something that makes you immediately comfortable and want to talk about it as well. In fact, one of the best examples that I saw of this, and I'm sure all of you have seen it, was this recent tweet by Anand Mahindra himself, where he said that on many calls he's actually worn a lungi under his shirt, and because he's not had to stand up, so people may not have known, but after this particular tweet, many more people will ask him to stand through calls. And I think that's such a great example, of a leader who is so inspirational and talking about it so openly, saying that, you may not be absolutely perfectly dressed when you're sitting at home and doing calls, and that is okay. And I have done it myself. So to that extent, I think in this whole domain of mental well-being and mental health, just communication, making yourself appear, not appear actually, making yourself more vulnerable in front of others, sharing your own challenges, and just endless communication is very, very, very critical. And I think across all of the leaders that I have interacted with, we have consciously tried to build these practices through various sessions. Apart from this, obviously there are the usual policies and processes that are available for employees. For example, there are employee assistance programs that exist where people can call up and talk to counselors, talk to therapists, etc. Then there are also specific sessions which are being organized for employees, but I would say that those are still programs. And the first part of it, which is culture linked, which is leader linked, and also just making people comfortable with the issues that they have and the fact that they can talk about them, is far, far more critical in this domain.
Thank you, Bhavya. That was quite comprehensive. I think I have seen globally that there is a direct correlation between leaders expressing personal vulnerability to mental health issues and how safe it is in the organization to talk about it, right? And there are numerous examples, and I'm really happy that PepsiCo is taking quite a leadership role. Any other, what I would be interested is from the other panelists, if there are some unique best practices in terms of how you encourage your leaders to make mental health look normal.
Yeah. And I think, Arun, if I may share, because what you said just now is so powerful, right? When you say make mental health look normal, right? Actually, that's really the key, Arun, and that's what we are focusing on, because mental health is everybody. It's all of us, right? Just taking that whole thing out of the box to say it is just another way of life. So, for example, I could have an issue of self-confidence. I could have an issue of anxiety. These are issues of mental health, and it could be simple things of even having a sense of purpose. Now, what we are doing is we are actually running a series around power of expressions, right? We didn't want to call it mental health, but we are saying it's a series on power of expressions. And what we're doing is we are actually bringing forth those expressions or situations so that people can be aware, because mental health, the biggest issue is about awareness. And once people are aware of it, they become conscious of it, right? Maximum mental issues happen because people just take it for granted, or they try to deal it in their own way without necessarily being able to structure it and take help. And that's what we are trying to do as far as mental health is concerned, to actually make it more as a way of life. Saying it's okay, these are things that actually...
it's not actually really a necessarily big challenges, right? I've had examples when leaders said, I've found a pattern where I become irritable after 14 hours at work. Absolutely. Right? It's normal, but they found it safe to say that. Or somebody else saying, I've had sleeplessness for the last 4 months. It's beginning to impact me. I'm going to take a couple of days off, right? Yes. It can be for anyone. It can be at any level. It can be at any stage in life. It's normal. Thank you, Suchi, for bringing home that point that it doesn't need to be necessarily larger than life, dramatic issues. Anything to chip in, anything to add there, or we can move to the next one?
Yeah, one point I would like to...
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Deepa.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. So I'd just like to share a small example. We have every once in a week, we have most of our senior leaders have a chat with their team members over MS Teams. And many of them actually talk about all the issues they're facing at home. For example, what is the best way to hold a jhadu in case you want to do jhadu at home? So, they actually share best practices on that, because all of them are actually doing it. They don't have domestic help coming in. Or somebody will say, my wife gave me a haircut. How does it look? Because I've not gone to a barber. So, they actually try to bring in more normalcy into the whole situation. All of us are facing that. Nobody has had a haircut for ages. So, and then which is the best site, which you go and get a good hair trimmer. So these kind of things are shared online because that's the situation all of us are in. So I think there's just a thing that I thought I'd share with you.
Yeah. And thank you very much, Deepa. I think, and as students at this age, please be aware that it doesn't need to be dramatic. It shouldn't take a hero or a heroine to acknowledge that they're going through issues. And we need to make it easy for people to seek help and find that sooner than later. I want to quickly, in the interest of time, move to a few other topics, right? I think whenever we talk about well-being, right, it's a very unidimensional thinking around. It should be about what employees expect from employers. I want to kind of delve into that topic a little bit and ask Deepa, is this a one-way street?
So Arun, I think it's absolutely not a one-way street. It is definitely a two-way street. And there are, just like employees have a lot of expectations from their employers, the employers too have a lot of expectations from their employees. And some of the things that we expected our employees to do, and they have very admirably lived up to it, is one of the things is that simple things. Please give your travel declaration. Have you traveled in the last 7 days anywhere outside the city that you're living in? Because that's the thing that will help us to minimize the risk of COVID infections. We had initially a lot of problems getting this people to just to give a simple declaration online that I have gone or I have not gone. And over a period of time, they understood the situation. And now I'm happy to say that we have 98% compliance to the travel declaration that we insist on. Similarly, when our hospitals that we run in various locations kind of were overwhelmed with patients, the doctors needed help in kind of dealing with these patients, dealing with a lot of people coming with a lot of anxieties coming in there, and they asked for help. And we just put out, we just asked people, would you like to volunteer in a COVID screening center? And I'm so happy to say that a lot of youngsters came up. There were people from blue-collared workforce, white-collared workforce. They just volunteered. And they said, okay, we'll come. And today, as of now, for the last 2 months now, They're volunteering, they're doing 3 shift duties, 8 hours each, donning all the PPEs. You cannot drink water or have any tea, coffee during those 8 hours. It's a very difficult situation to be in. And this is purely voluntary. Nobody asked them to go. They just came on their own. And that is what actually, it just warms your heart to feel that there are people who live up to those expectations.
Thank you. And what about the economic costs associated with well-being initiatives? Suchi or Bhavya, would you like to add something there?
That's a tricky one, Arun, because as you know, right, it is always about the economics, and sometimes it's really about whether it's a quantitative ROI or whether it's a qualitative ROI. It just boils down to that. And what we're realizing with this is it's a balance, Arun. And I'll give you a small example, right? See, as all of you would know, transportation is something which is provided to employees, specifically if you're working in night shift, and specifically if there are women employees after a certain period in time, right? You have a number of hours, and based on that, transportation is provided. Now, because of COVID, what we said is that, okay, 99% of our people are going to work from home, but that critical, mission critical employees and client critical employees are going to actually come to office and work. Now, because you are asking them to come to office and work, you are responsible for their well-being. So being able to take that extra effort to make sure that, and providing the transportation is not just about providing the cars or the vehicles, it's about authenticizing that the drivers who are coming in are necessarily screened. It is really making sure that the vehicles that the employees are actually getting into is actually clean. It is making sure, should there be any symptoms of the drivers, those are necessarily detected up early. So there's so many things that actually get associated with it. So the only way I would answer that question, Arun, yes, we did make certain investments, correct? And be it, even you touched upon that, which is such an important one. We made investments even in terms of broadband connections, correct, of people. We altered our policies of broadband connectivity and reimbursements of our employees. So we did incur certain costs, but it was always at the extent of saying, can we necessarily keep the employees at the center? At the same time, make sure that they're responsible in the way they're using it, correct? And that sense of responsibility and awareness is what we continue to drive through our managers, because that's where I think the balance really comes in. But it is about the economies, Arun.
Thank you, Suchi. I think it's on a lighter note, it's my privilege to surface elephants in the room as a moderator. So thank you very much. And I think it's a message to all the students that it's not, life is not very rosy with unlimited purse strings. And I think there is a fine line between employee enablement and employee entitlement, right? And I think how that gets played out in the industry is something that we need to be very careful about. Dr. Santosh, Bhavya, anyone, would you like to add a quick 30-second to that? Any key pertinent points there?
Yeah, I personally, okay, Bhagat, go ahead.
Sure. So, Arun, from my perspective, I think as far as PepsiCo is concerned, because I've been here for a long while, I think we've always kind of prioritized the employee and the needs and kind of, whatever it is required, that is required for them. So to that extent, we prioritize that. But having said that, like you said, the monies are limited. So we also equally focus on productivity to say that, okay, if this is what we really need to do and this is what is critical at this time, then what are those other spends that we can work on which can compensate for this? So it's not like the whole pie is limited. So that's been the approach. If we prioritize this, then what else is it that we are deprioritizing, because you're working out of a finite source of money. So that's the first part. And the second part, I think, which is also a very critical bit, is that when we design initiatives or when we're thinking of initiatives to do in terms of well-being or any of the other, employee support initiatives, it is also about combing through the initiatives to say that what is it that my employees actually need, and do all the employees need the same things? Because many a times different set of employees, if you look at them, you can easily look at employees as different cohorts, and each of those cohorts need different things. So it's not only about one set of initiatives that work for everybody. I think which is where you can also optimize the monies that you spend. It's not about doing everything for everyone. It's about doing the right thing for the right set of people, which is where you can also optimize what you're spending and how you're spending, because everything doesn't cost money. So
thank you, Bhavya. I think two key learnings. It's not a segment of one, and unitary overheads can't grow like trees. Thank you very much. And Dr. Santosh, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think here culture also has to play a very, very important role. And as somebody said, culture is a way of living. So as our organization, we are very cost conscious. So I think employees also understand where the investment is required and where investment is not required for us to actually tide through this pandemic. So I think culture is also playing very, very important role. Earlier, we had an initiative called cash, cost, and growth. So we need to focus on cash. We need to ensure that cost is controlled, and then we focus on the growth.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And if I quickly move to the next one, as HR practitioners and business leaders, the last 3-4 months have seen a lot of policy shifts in terms of, let's say, improving well-being at different levels. Now, the different levels could be in terms of how they benefit clients, how they benefit employees, and how they benefit communities. So can I ask with Suchi to see if you can share one or two key snippets on how policies have shaped client engagement in these days, and then move to Deepa and Bhavya on if you want to add something to the community side to it, and we take it from there. Suchi?
Sure, sure. I think, Arun, the students will also benefit by hearing from you what is Barclays doing in this area. So we would invite you to actually share your thoughts there too. So see, for us, thankfully, what had happened is most of the policies, as you know, right, is always centered towards how do we make sure that the employee experience part of it is taken care of, right? So be it in terms of meaningful work, be it in terms of rewards and recognition, all of that. So the pandemic really become a catalyst just to say, how can I actually, one, make sure that the implementation of the policies is consistent not only in India, but consistent globally. That's one. The second, it is understood by people and they take responsibility for that interpretation and usage. And the third, how do we enable technology for that? Correct? I'll give you an example. So we always had work from home as a policy. But what we did because of the pandemic, we actually tweaked it to actually say business enabled work from home, right? So that required us to be able to change the workflows and everything. Why did we do that? Because it is something which necessitated because of the conditions which allowed the people to work from home. That part of it still remains as a part of the kitty, right? Like I told you, the broadband connections, those policies we changed, right? We actually made sure that we went completely through the technology route. We actually created an app. And as a result, even the time sheeting aspect of it, to make sure that's where the business element comes in, that the predictability is there. We moved to that element where we use technology to actually focus on the attendance for time, really focus on plugging in time even for the shift allowance. So we enable, bottom line is we just enable technology for making our policies more available to people, easy for people to interpret and use. Other than that, and maybe possible tweaks on some of those policies, no major changes we had to do because most of our policies were more or less in line with what you would do otherwise. It really didn't require us a huge shift.
So thank you, Suchi, I think for turning the tables. I think we did quite a lot on, let's say, the employee flexibility as programs, policies covering that. But if I go to client focus, right, the banks have been at the forefront of, let's say, the economic battle against COVID, and especially in markets where we are the high street bank. We suddenly had to scale up to face the kind of onslaught that our clients, whether it is SMEs, retail customers, face at different levels to respond to, let's say, their financial needs, right? So some of the things that we have done is to make financial inclusion even broader at this point of time, to make sure that people have advisory help as they need. One of our parts of the organization is called Barclays Financial Assistance, which is about how do you actually work with clients who are facing troubles, whether they are SMEs or small retail individuals, in terms of partnering with them to take care of their financial well-being in a sustainable way, right? So some of these, needless to say, in a regulated industry are coming across the industry from the central banks and regulators. But Barclays has taken quite a leap over that in terms of how it has put its broad shoes forward to address the needs of the society. But again, I want to go back to the panelists, Santosh, Deepa. Deepa, you wanted to cover something around how Tata Steel, let's say, empowers the community through employees?
Yes. So thanks, Arun. I'd just like to share with you some practices that we follow. When this pandemic came about, there was a lot of, as you know, a lot of employees were at home, and it's a stressful situation to be in, and you really have kind of, you're restricted. The boundaries are very restricted. You can't go physically, you're restricted. So that in order to take the people out of that mode, we offered a lot of programs to our employees for volunteerism online. And many of our employees actually volunteered for various things. Some of the things I'll share with you. One of the things that happened it was a very popular program. It was called Farishta, and it is a play on words. It is Far Rishta. So we said that you can actually counsel children from various residential schools which are there in the city, because the schools are not working anymore and the children are there. So we all connected to these children over our mobile phones through WhatsApp video calls, etc. We had career counseling sessions with them. We had storytelling sessions with them. We shared with them practices like
Is it just, have we lost Deepa?
Yeah, even I can't
small children.
Yeah, okay, she's back, I think.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. So a lot of counseling to small children happened online. Secondly, there was also, we reached out to, there's a local prison here, and we reached out to the prisoners if they could make masks for the community at large. And there were people who interacted with them, and there was a huge demand for masks, which was suddenly it came up. And happy to share that the inmates of the prison came up and rose to this expectation, and there was a lot of availability of masks available. So this is another way of reaching out to the community around us. And
if I may ask, how is it really landed with your employees? What impact has it had on your own workforce?
Yeah. So it actually helps them to kind of come out of a mindset of a feeling of helplessness, because you are now helping somebody, enabling some work to be done. And it gives you a very positive feeling that you have been able to make an impact on a life of some other individual, and a very positive impact at that one. So I think that came about as a kind of a mental, it built up their mental strength that you are not so helpless anymore. You can also make an impact on somebody else's life while you are within the confines of your home.
Thank you.
That was, yeah.
Thank you. What you asked just now is a very powerful way of looking at it, right? And the way Deepa explained, because look at history, look at how human evolution has happened, right? Any change catalyst, any trauma, right? Particularly they say the resilience part of it, which you spoke about yesterday, actually comes from here. It's actually the post-trauma actually can push you in two ways. Either you can go on the negative side of it, or it can push you to a mindset of growth. And resilience is nothing but just about that, saying how do you find neural pathways to be able to find different ways to be productive, to find a solution. And that's the beauty, that's the positive thing of any adversity that actually falls on human as a race. It allows us to just keep pushing ahead towards a growth mindset. And that's where a lot of research has happened. And I'm sure it will continue to happen, but that's what it is. It's about how do we have a growth mindset?
Thank you. I think there has been a lot of focus in organizations around removing some of the barriers to well-being. But relatively untested is how do you really build resilience in your people to be able to manage these challenges themselves. Thank you for bringing that out, Suchi. Santosh, Bhavya, is there anything you'd like to add very quickly?
I can go next. So, if I just look at it from a business context, so I agree with Suchi, what she had said earlier, which is that most of the policies as far as flexibility or as far as enabling people working from different locations across the globe or working flexibly, were already there as far as PepsiCo is concerned. I think what we immediately did, was this whole business focus and focusing on it in a slightly different way from what you do normally. So let me just explain what I said. So for an example, immediately as soon as this happened, we said that we will plan in 3 ways. First one, obviously, and the most critical one is how do we tackle this current challenge that we have in terms of business performance, in terms of supply, or whatever the challenges across different countries in the world, because the challenges were different in different parts of the world. That's the first bit. The second bit focuses on how do I deliver the rest of the year. And then the third bit is more about long-term planning and how do I look at my business in the medium or in the long term, as different from how I have looked at it till date. So just about clarifying to everybody that this is the way that we will work. As soon as you have that, then you go down and tell people that, okay, if this crisis has happened, what are the principles that I'm going to follow in this crisis? So anytime if you have a decision to make, because relatively when people are working from different locations, working, from their homes, you're not able to quickly discuss things and make decisions. So if you're faced with a discussion, here are the principles that you should follow. And then lastly, which is much more personal, so starting from the organization, then sort of looking at principles, and then coming to me personally, saying that in a regular year when everything was normal, if there were 10 objectives that I had, which I had to do through the course of the year, what are the only 2 or 3 very, very critical ones that I should focus on through this year? So I think that really helps people with respect to their well-being, and it really connects with people to say that, okay, I don't need to focus on everything. Let me just focus on this. And then when I have when I am going through a tough time and I have to do 20 other things, then how is it that I focus myself on the most critical things? And, that was the bit that I just wanted to add on this.
From the power of focusing on a few, let's move to the power of technology in supporting well-being. And I'm going to turn to Dr. Santosh. I'm going to make it a bit personal, right? What's that one technology tool or app or whatever that your firm used that has landed very well? And what is that one tool that you have used personally that has improved your well-being? So I want to start with you, Dr. Santosh, and move quickly to others.
Yeah, so I think we as a human being are a social animal. I think one of our need is to get connected with others. Because of this pandemic, all of us are locked in our homes. But the tool that we as an organization have used is Zoom. And I can tell you, some of the leaders who were not at all open to have a telephonic or web interviews of the candidates, they started conducting business meetings through Zoom. So I think that is one of the change that I'm seeing. And one thing related to policy, like we never had a work from home policy earlier. But I think last 4 months have taught us that we can work from home, and we need to actually, chew over it and come out with some policy which can actually help employees to work from home.
Fantastic. Zoom it is for you, Dr. Santosh. Who's going to follow that? With anything which is not Zoom.
I'll tell you what we did at ITC Infotech is we launched an app that I was talking to you about, the technology, which is called Fight Corona app. And this app is nothing but it's like a UI, okay? It's like a front end that actually follows through with everything, every interaction that is important for an employee. It allows you to actually interact through the app. So be it information about who's going to be your module lead. So what we have done is that we have divided the entire organization in rapid response teams. So there's a team lead and there are team members who are mapped onto that. That entire information, everything that people need to know to do their jobs, that is information is available through that app, right? And it's a work in progress. So what we are doing is that we're providing information about COVID, what are the SOPs, that's one part of the story. The second is, like I said, what is the interface that you need to actually log in your time, that's there. Policy information, that's there. So that's what we are using as far as Fight Corona app is concerned. And you asked one more important thing, saying what is it that each of us use personally, right? And I don't know if you have ever, the Brahma Kumaris, I don't know whether many of us have heard about them, but they actually have an app, okay? And that app is called, and I was just, when you asked that question, I was just looking for it. Just give me 1 second. That app is called thinkrite.me, right? And what that app does, it's like a daily meditation app. It's about validation points. It's about affirmations that you do to yourself that you could take to a community as well, which is to your teams, to your family members. But that's one beautiful app that I try and use every day. Once a day, I definitely use. I try and do it twice a day if I can. But that's something that I have changed in the last 2.5 months, just in terms of personal well-being, to make sure that I am centered so that I am able to help others. So that's what I'm doing.
Fantastic. So it's online meditation tools. It could be poker for somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Bhavya, Deepa, anything quickly to add?
Well, yeah, so not so much technology, but I can tell you that at PepsiCo, so in the mornings as well as in the evenings, because we have so many time zones, it's like really crazy. But we've tried to find a time slot where in the morning as well as in the evening, you have these different classes every day. So one day it's yoga, one day it's Pilates, the third day it's a dance class, etc. So you can basically do it with your family. So everybody at your home, whoever is there can join that class together. And I can tell you obviously that, not everybody joins every day, but there are a lot of people who join, those classes. So it really helps actually just seeing other people and also seeing, a little bit of exercise in some form. And some days it's also meditation. So that's been a good experience for us as well.
Thank you, Bhavya. I think I'm going to stay with you, right? Now, there is a fair amount of uncertainty in during normal situations, but in the last 4 months, there has been a lot of fear in the society around real issues and what these people possibly expect as the economic fallouts of this become more clear, and community health issues. How is PepsiCo addressing fear around jobs, around economic impact? And I know it's a very fine line between not over-promising and not driving a wave of fear across the organization. So I want to ask you and others how, if at all, your organization is messaging difficult news, right? How is that getting projected in the organization?
Sure. Thanks, Arun, once again, for bringing up a very critical topic, in terms of how are we sharing all of this news. I think, linked to what we were discussing earlier, again, authenticity and honesty is something that is most acceptable to people at this stage. And that is what helps build trust the most, specifically in a crisis situation. And I think those are the things that we have followed through this. That would be the first thing that I would say, trying to share information as much as is available and as much as can be shared, we do share that. Definitely not over-promising, definitely not saying things which we ourselves are not sure about, but sharing that. And I think in a way that helps, because if I look at us globally, what has happened is that different parts of the world have responded very differently to the same pandemic. And if I look at India, of course, India had one of the strictest lockdowns globally. We had like 5 weeks of nothing happening, right? Nothing was running. But similarly, if I look at, our own organization in different parts of the world, if I look at the US and if I look at our snacks business there, it has done exceedingly well. If I look at, the Middle East, and if I look at some of the other markets, actually most of the markets, e-commerce as a business has done really well. Similarly, there are success stories also to share at the same time. There are parts of the organization which are not doing well or which may be challenged because of the pandemic, but equally, like we were saying earlier, there are silver linings, there are green shoots. And I think what we've done well, apart from the first thing which I mentioned, which is being authentic and honest, is sharing success stories and sharing them widely. Talking about what is good as well as what is not going so well, because it kind of helps create a balance within the organization. And even if I look at India, so for example, if there were 5 weeks in India which were completely challenged, nothing else was happening, there was still work that was happening which could be called out. So even when you're not doing well, business performance is not happening because of external situations, there are people who are doing some great work. So calling all of that out, celebrating success is something that we've done constantly. The
And
third
any,
thing,
sorry, Bhavya, I want to just correct there.
yeah, no, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you say?
So any best practices from the other panelists around addressing fear head on?
So I would just like to share with you, we have something which we call MD Online, and this is a monthly thing. And even when there was no pandemic, this was going on, and we continued that practice. And this is something which every beginning of the month, our CEO and MD connects online with each and every individual of the organization. Everybody can log in at the same time. And he shares with us a lot of things which are happening in the organization, the good news, the not so good news, how the market is doing, what is the customer saying, what are the things we did exceedingly well globally, and what are the things which did not do so well. So all the news, all the highlights for the month are shared by him. People can ask questions to him. They are live questions, not monitored or doctored in any way. And it's almost a 2-hour session. And every month this happens. And since this is a practice which has been going on for the last many years, we continued that practice. And this proved to be very effective in terms of communicating to the last man down that what's happening in the organization, what are the things which we need to be careful of in this pandemic, how the company is managing the situation, what is the expectation from the employees, what is the expectation from the union. So it's a very free and frank discussion. It's an open forum. Everybody can ask any question they want. And it is, people do ask some difficult questions. And it's absolutely no bars hold conversation which happens.
Thank you. So thank you. And I'm going to move to Dr. Santosh. Is this well-being, there is a lot of action on the well-being front in the last 4 months. Is this a contextual one? And what aspects of well-being do you think will be there once the world goes past COVID? What would be the kind of the legacy around well-being well past the COVID era?
Yeah, I'm of the strong opinion that pandemic is there for some time. It is not there for the eternal time. It may be there for few months, maybe for few years for some organization, but one day or other day we are going to control it. We may not be able to control it 100%, but it may become just one of the another disease, like we have any other disease in the world. So COVID can become another disease and doctors can treat it. But at the same time, well-being as a subject, employee well-being, is continue to be there eternally, whether it is 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, but taking care of employees' physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial health is going to be there for all organizations. And I think personally, I believe that as an organization, what we have to see is we may not be able to predict what is going to happen in the future, but we need to plan for the future. So while taking the short-term measures, we cannot forget our long-term goals. So we also need to have a focus on our long-term goals in terms of new product development, new market development, etc. So business in terms of the long term, we should not actually lose sight of it at this stage.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. And there are certainly some parts of that well-being spectrum. For example, let's say financial well-being. India, perhaps globally, has one of the lowest penetration of insurance products and retirement planning, right? Yes, we do have a very, very young demographic, but there is a huge bubble that could get built over the years. Any insights from other panelists in terms of some aspects of well-being that you believe will become more and more relevant as we go into the future?
Yes, here's what I think, and I'm seeing that happen as we speak, correct? Now, when you think about well-being, the emotional and mental well-being, especially from a work environment standpoint, actually stems from how have I necessarily contributed? How do I feel about that, right? Necessarily, have I been part of meaningful work, right? And what's happening is that definition of meaningful work. And how do I put myself against that yardstick is probably where a lot of reflection is happening in people. Because what this pandemic is going to do, the economic impact of it is that there will be impact on employment of people. That's a reality. And that will impact well-being of people, right? Be it financial well-being, emotional, mental well-being, it will. So what organizations and what employees and each one of the employees are actually going through is to actually focus on what's really important. I mean, what's really important, because everybody asks the question, is my job secure? So what we are doing is that we are actually turning the whole thing and asking them to say, what would you do to actually keep your employment secure? And what do I mean by that? Your employment is really dependent on skills that you have. And being constantly invested in those skills and learning and be able to cross-skill and upskill and build on your behavioral skills, we are seeing suddenly a huge shift in people being able to appreciate, and they're hungry to say, okay, tell me what more do I need to learn, right? Because otherwise we had to constantly push them. And now we are seeing a shift, not because of anything else, but because of that fear of saying, I'm going to lose my job if I'm not relevant. So as a result, this, Arun, I believe, is going to be important. It's going to be a shift in the minds of people of how they think about learning and investment in themselves, which is not going to change, it's going to stay. And that's what we are saying, that tomorrow, even if any organization is not going to be able to keep a certain individual in the job for various reasons, for economic reasons, at least the organization will do as much to say, okay, even if you go somewhere else, you'll be successful because you have the necessary skills. Look at what happened, even, for example, large organizations like Salesforce, if you think about even organizations where supposedly the cutting edge work is being done, they're also laying off people, correct? But look at the power of community, because that actually, I believe, actually helps from a well-being standpoint. The same alumni group of those organizations are coming together to say that these are the people who are coming out of an X organization are really the best in their field. Go ahead and hire them. So it's actually creating a lot of community sense of purpose, which I think is a very positive thing, which impacts well-being, which is a social equity part of it, and which is here to stay.
Absolutely well said, Suchi. I think staying with you, I think we are not alone in the COVID and the well-being challenge, right? I think clearly, whilst there are a few Nordic countries which are always very high on the well-being / happiness index, it's not certainly a challenge that most countries have addressed. Are there any learnings that you could share in terms of the interactions with clients, partners, ecosystem, global ecosystem that ITC Infotech or others work with, that you could bring to the table?
Sure. And without naming clients, what we could definitely tell you is client business predictability is getting impacted, and obviously that impacts us, right? And even when we went into a lockdown, right? Our biggest priority at that point in time, and I think Deepa spoke about it, all of you spoke about it, is how do you necessarily bring in predictability of communication to your partner group, be it the client or any of the partnerships, right? Now, what was interesting to see is when we were communicating with the clients within that first 15 days of March 22nd, for the first 2 weeks, they were like very happy to say that, okay, you guys have reached out to us. Thank you very much. It is a sign of great partnership of being a responsive organization. Come May, the month of May, the whole conversation is shifting towards say, all this is very good. Tell me, how is it that the employees who are actually working on our accounts are being productive? Tell me, how is it that you are maintaining predictability to the SLAs that you have signed up with me on, right? And as a result, the shift is really become, and Bhavya talked about trust, right? So this is the time that trust is actually being put to test, and in very small ways, correct? And being able to deliver what you have promised, irrespective of whatever is the situation. And that could be even delay in payments, right? So you have certain situations where the payments are getting delayed, but that doesn't mean you can step back on the quality of services that you were supposed to deliver on. And that is how the client and service provider equations are actually being tested on the principle of trust. And what is it that you are going to commit to? Because this situation is not going to change your revenue impact or the predictability that you have asked for. So for example, even in our organization and many service organizations, we had to relook at our financials of the organization. We had to relook our planned numbers. Then we went back to the clients to actually look at their businesses. And what is happening, Arun, what I can tell you is the amount of consulting advice that clients are asking from us to say, tell us how can we build in predictability? And if we are able, and that's what we are focusing on, to allow them to see, and it has to be a transparent process, we are allowing them to come and work with us to see what is actually happening. And you know how bad it is in a banking environment, right? Now think about it. Banking environment in an ODC, you are not even allowed to take phones inside, correct? From that, where you are saying that you are actually working from home. So it's like working with the clients with that mindset shift so that they are still confident that their security aspects are not going to be compromised on, is more like having cadence on your processes, sensitization with people, sense of responsibility. All of that is actually coming in as far as these client relationships.
Absolutely. I think the pandemic is shaping minds across the spectrum. Governments, politicians, industry bodies, employee representatives, employees, NGOs. It's having a profound impact across all of these spectrums. And I think the learnings are certainly global. Now, with a few minutes to go before we give the promised time for questions, I want to close by two questions that are open to all of you. And I think the first one is, what do you think is that one big unaddressed challenge around well-being? And second is, what is your one well-being secret or hack that you want to share with everyone? So I want to make it quick, and so that we give the promised half an hour to the students for questions. So one, let's say one big unaddressed challenge that you see around well-being, and one well-being secret of yours that you want to share with others.
Arun, we'll start with you this time. You have been a gracious moderator, and you have always given us the opportunity to express. I think we'll start with you.
So I think the one big unaddressed one is mental well-being. We are just touching the tip of the iceberg. And my hack is I have set myself a COVID well-being goal, which is possibly to become lighter, but without and being a faster marathon runner after the pandemic than I was before, right? And I'm using a hack called habit stacking, which I read from a book called Atomic Habits. So that would be my 2 cents. I'm going to throw it open to all of you now.
For me, actually, the one line secret of well-being is always focus on the possibilities and take the right actions. Take the right actions which can bring the positivity for every human being.
So, Dr. Santosh, one secret of yours, what do you do to improve your well-being?
I always focus in circle of influence and not in circle of concern.
Fantastic. Others?
So Arun, basically, as you said, mental well-being is of immense importance, and I think that's going to be a huge challenge for all of us. One thing that I personally do is make sure I don't miss out on my morning yoga sessions. We do have online sessions with few of our instructors, and very well, it goes off very well. So I think that is something which actually sets the tone for the day. you start your day on a positive note, on an energized note, and then the rest of the day follows equally well.
So your morning habits, Deepa, that's your hack. Suchi and Bhavya.
Bhavya goes and I can go after that. I will go last.
Okay. So for me, I think I agree on the mental, well-being and it not being addressed. I think the other unaddressed part is that, finding the right balance between all of these, employee-centric initiatives that we want to run versus what the employees actually need and want. Finding that balance is also very critical. I think that's another one. And for me, my personal, well-being mantra in a way is that actually I don't put too much pressure on myself to say that, okay, because I'm working from home and because I'm at home, I have to do all these things. So I don't have to read 10 books. I don't have to do, yoga or cook better or do all of this. And then when I do things which I actually love, it frankly makes me happier than planned activities of saying because everybody else is doing all of this and Instagramming about it. I don't put that pressure on myself at all. And it really helps me
So
be
being
happier.
spontaneous and
Yes.
going with the flow. Lovely. Thank you.
So for me, it's not so much a hack, but it's more about a principle. So, and this is a book that I would invite, or you listen into the podcast, and this is an invitation for all of the students. See if you can get hold of this book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Accor. Okay. Now, this gentleman has done a significant amount of research, right, in terms of how does your brain really function when you're happy, okay, and how does actually that contribute towards your well-being. So what I learned from that book and that I try and implement every day is that what you accomplish or not accomplish is not who you are, right? It's a very powerful thing to keep in mind. And as a result, what's also important and that I do is to actually give compliment to one person, right? Every day, I actually find one compliment to pay to my team members or to my family members, one compliment. And I try and do that for 21 days, right? Because what your research says is when you do that, it actually creates happiness. When you do it for 21 to 28 days, it actually changes your neural network in the brain. And I do it very selfishly, okay? It's not an altruistic motive, because what I believe, if I am able to do it for somebody else, maybe it will encourage them to say something positive about me. That actually creates a lot of happiness quotient in me too. So that's really the way I would think about this.
Thank you, Suchi. And I'm going to close by twisting a quote from, let's say, the very famous Austrian psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search of Meaning. If I can apply that to this context, between all the stressors and our response is the gap that is for us to choose, right? And if we make that really a careful, well thought through set of actions, I am absolutely sure that we will be able to demonstrate a good well-being ourselves and then be able to spread it to the world around us. So thank you all the fellow panelists. It couldn't have been more diverse. We want to now open it up for questions from all the lovely students and staff in IIM Amritsar.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Arun, and thanks to the panel for and especially Mr. Arun for moderating the discussion in such a structured way. It really made it easy for all of us to grasp complex ideas. So our friends in the audience are also ready with their questions. I'd like to first invite Krishna Swaroop from MBA 06 batch to ask the first question.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
First off, I want to say that it's an absolute honor to ask our questions to some of the foremost experts in the industry. My question is addressed to Arun Krishnamurthy, sir. Sir, we can't say for sure what work and the workplace will look like in 2, 5, or 20 years. Digital convenience is the key word, and it comes along with operational complexities and questions of individual freedom. From flexible and not so flexible work policies to intuitive technology and healthy workplace design, what do you foresee when it comes to the impact of the future of work on how employees feel?
Wow, that's quite a lot of questions within one. I'm going to say that uh, whatever it is, it's going to be materially different from the past we left behind in March, right? Uh, the the more what I would call as a futurist in me is saying it's going to be a big gap between those on the positive side of the digital divide and those on the other side of the digital divide. There is going to be a lack of equilibrium between these two worlds. Both will exist and the gap will be quite wide before the gap gets narrow. For starters, while a lot of organizations and leaders would have opened their eyes to the possibilities of the future world, the realities of the today's scenario, coupled with regulation, governmental policies, supply chain constraints, uh, capital expenditure constraints, and the realities of running a business are going to uh, determine the pace at which organizations move towards that future. All right. So I have no doubts that the future is going to be far more agile, flexible, unstructured, and digitized than it has ever been. The pace will be very different by industry segment and all the contours that I mentioned just before. Now,
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question, Krishna, and thanks for the answer, Arun sir. So
can I suggest you just address me as Arun? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So I'll ask Deep Thapa to come up from MBA 05 to ask the next question.
Okay, my question is directed to Deepa ma'am. So as in this COVID situation, many states gave exemptions regarding working hours to increase the production. So what new HR policies to be should be introduced so that well-being of the employee and the matching of the production level can be tackled at the same time?
So Deep, I am Deepa and not Deepa ma'am, first of all. Yeah. Second is, like you said, what HR policy. So I will not be able to say a pinpoint on a particular HR policy. It's the approach that you have to look at. So all this while you have also a certain statutory guidelines which you are guided by, and there is a compliance issue and you will have to comply by those. But as you see, there's a new labor code, the new wage code, which is coming in. There are so many things which are changing, which have not changed for the last, say, 30, 40 years. It has not changed, but now it is undergoing change. There are changes in terms of the minimum wage, there are changes in terms of working hours. So the whole atmosphere of around which organization operates is undergoing a change in terms of compliance, if I could call that. So that is one very big positive change which is happening, and it's a welcome change. It happens, it just coincides with the COVID situation. So it just happens that these two things are happening at the same time, which is a good thing. So I would say that the situation is such, like Arun said, it's going to be extremely agile. We have to be extremely responsive to the whole situation because each day will be a different day. And you cannot have a very strict, straight-jacketed set of rules by which you'll be guided. You'll have to keep reinventing, revisiting your rules and regulations and the guidelines and policies that operate within your organization. And each organization will deal with it differently. A manufacturing industry will deal with it differently. An IT company will deal with it differently because their sets of challenges are a little different. So it is a very, very dynamic situation. The answer is to be agile, to be responsive, to be accountable for your employees. At no point of time can we just disown this responsibility. Okay? And it is going to be an extremely volatile situation. It is going to be a very unstructured situation. We have never seen this before, and there are no answers to this. We learn each day, and we will take each day as it comes. And as in our organization, every day there's a new guideline. And the guidelines which were issued in March, for example, are now not valid anymore. They are overruled by some other new guideline. And it's just happening in a matter of months. While some of the guidelines which we were guided by earlier were going on for so many years. So, you see the pace of work and the pace of change is going to be very, very fast. And the faster one adapts to this change, the more successful he or she and that organization will be.
Definitely, Deepa, Ms. Deepa, and I think that as we discussed earlier on as well, that the acceleration for change is going to be very high. So I'll invite the next question from Gurneet Kaur. She's from MBA 06 batch.
First of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you, the panelists, for providing us with corporate. I hope I'm
Gurneet, can you
audible.
please be a bit louder?
Am I okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, all the panelists, for providing us with corporate insights about our topic, well-being, employee well-being. So my question is addressed to Bhavya ma'am. Ma'am, like you mentioned that it doesn't really matter where you're working from as long as you are contributing to your work. So how would you suggest an employee who is a fresher to seek guidance from their seniors who is managing 5 to 6 employees under him in this virtual setup?
Thanks, Guneet, for that question. I think, in these times and in actually even when there was no COVID and people were working together, not all your team members any which ways may work in the same location. So even pre-COVID, even if you talk about one geography, which is India, you may not have all your team members at the same place. So that's the first thing, right? Of course, with COVID now, what has happened is that nobody is working out of the same office. So it's the same situation for everybody. So it's only heightened, and it's not a completely new situation. That's the first starting point. Now, in terms of, if I look at a fresher coming into an organization and then having to adjust to this completely new normal, which is that everybody is working from different locations, and how do I adjust to that environment, and how do I connect with my manager more? I think the core principles remain the same, which is that if you're new, first of all, the biggest thing is be humble, be ready to learn. Okay, and reach out to as many people as you can within the environment. You may know some people, you may not know anyone at all. The most important thing as a fresher is to have learning as your first priority, and to go to whatever extent you need to get to it. Just find out how many people are there who have anything to do with what you're doing. Reach out to all of those people. Build a proper network, and there are various frameworks which are available, and I'm sure you guys will know it much better than I do. But when you decide your network, right, who are the people who are critical to you, you almost define each area that you need people's interactions with. You need mentors, you also need buddies, you need people who are professionally functionally much better than you, obviously, because you're experts. Try to plot all of those on a network map and try to reach out to all of them proactively. If you are a fresher, obviously the organization will do whatever they can, right, to onboard you. But try at your end also to have that initiative and have the same enthusiasm to reach out to people. So that's the first thing. The second, because you're not there, not here and there where you can actually go to your manager and update her or him about what you're doing. I think the second tip that I would give you is that irrespective of whether or not your manager or your seniors are asking you for updates, you should update them in terms of whatever work is happening at your end, whatever it is that you've been working on. Ensure that you keep the right people in the loop to say what is it that you're working on, and keep taking inputs. The third thing is that many times, as people who pass out of colleges, we feel, and I was the same, frankly, we feel that if we've got a project or if we've got something to work on, let me complete the full thing before I go, to my manager or to my mentor to show them the work. I think you should not do that. Within organizations, everybody believes in correcting as you go. So as soon as you've done something, socialize your work with as many people as you can. Try to talk to people and ask for them for ideas, get their guidance while you're working. So those would be the top three things that I can think of that you can work on at your own end, whether or not the organization provides you anything. If I look at the organization, because over the last 4 months or so, we've had multiple new joinees across locations. So not just in India, yes, of course, but even in other locations who are working for other locations and they couldn't travel to their actual location of work because of the pandemic. Now, even in those situations, from an org perspective, what we've done is that very much more structured induction plans than we would have had in the past. Even in the past, we had a lot of focus on onboarding, but in this particular scenario, specifically if a person is coming in new, you would have to focus on it much more in terms of helping the person get familiarized with the culture, which is a very difficult thing, because when you step into a office as a new joinee, you get a feel of the culture. There is a vibe of the place, which you don't get when you're obviously joining from a different location. But we've tried to do that through VR experiences. So we've got VR, virtual reality tours of our factories, of our offices, for our new joinees, so that they get a feel of what is it that they're getting into. Even in terms of introducing them to the variety of our products and ensuring our products reach their homes and their families get to experience our products, the entire range of them at home. So those are some of the things that we've done at an organization end. But I think even as a fresher, that when you step into an organization, there is a huge responsibility on you as well to reach out and do everything else that I spoke about earlier. I hope that answers your question, Gurneet.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Thank you so much.
On a lighter note, Bhavya gave a lot of detailed answers on how to navigate. I can certainly add that what we can see as a big shift or the transition is just like how we felt when the CBSE syllabus changed the year when we were coming to the board exams. Subsequent batches will assume that's the norm, right? So don't worry about that. And I think the basics of how do you build networks, how do you win friends, how do you influence people, how do you make yourself visible and heard, the old Dr. Parikh templates, they all stand good in the digital space. The tools with which you do it are different. I would even say, uh, in some ways, the virtual world actually kills the distance bias, and it creates a more level playing field between those who are sitting next to you and those who are slightly further away. So, lot of opportunities, lot of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Arun and Bhavya, for contributing. I'll ask Anik from MBA 05 to put up his question next.
Good evening, everyone. It was really insightful and got to know a lot from today's conversation. Well, my question is directed to Mr. Arun. Though the COVID has facilitated the e-working mode and also helped normalize the work from home structure, during the lockdown, going through the study from home phase, it was really fun and homely, but it lacked the excitement and the ease of face-to-face communication. When the lockdown lifts and if life becomes normal after that, what will HR professionals do to help migrate the employees from a somewhat laid back and individualistic work from home structure to a highly active and social work life?
So, first of all, I think, sorry if I'm not taking out on you. I think rather than the question, there have been a lot of assumptions in your statement. I actually think that no two individuals have had the same experience during the pandemic situation, right? There are people who are struggling with the environment out there and people who are thriving out there. There are people who are possibly not at their best. There are people at their best. There are people like, let's say, completely discharged batteries, and there are people like Duracells, right? I think the response, so hence, is not going to be like a segment of one, which is to see how the future of the workplace is addressing, uh, in what some organizations call as, let's say, the employee personas, right? Depending upon what stage in the life you are and your own personality type and orientation, you might belong to a persona, and personas are not uncommon in the customer services, sales, marketing world. And to me, the biggest shift that is likely to happen is, which is not new, which has been existing for the last few years, but perhaps more in the rewards and cafeteria compensation space, is that more and more organizations are going to move away from looking at employees as a segment of one, which we also, Bhavya, rightly addressed earlier in the conversation. So I would ask you to, and this is not about challenging your question, but I would ask you to park that thought and say that that reflects the experiences that you have had and may not necessarily reflect the experiences of everyone else. But for you, that's the truth.
Yeah, Arun, I just want to add to that because I felt exactly what you said, which is that there were a lot of assumptions in your question, and I just want to point you to a recent study that I had read. In fact, when Arun was talking, I was trying to find that, and I'm just going to read from there, by the way. So the number of meetings, and this is a study that was done by Harvard and NYU researchers, and they said that the average number of meetings during the pandemic, and this is data from across the world, have increased by 13%. Then if you look at emails sent after hours is up by 8%. And then so net just wanting to point you to the direction to say that most of the people again who are working from home are finding it actually more hectic than before. And it's not at all a laid back attitude, as you mentioned, while it may be the case for some people. But if you remember that, we are all expected to deliver what we were expected to deliver, because business performance as it is and the expectations thereof remain the same. Having said that, our work environments have become significantly more challenged in this pandemic, and hence this whole working from home scenario for many people is much more challenging. And as far as my colleagues are concerned, and if I talk about the people that I speak to being an HR business partner, people are dying actually to get back to work, because when you work from home, your calendar is completely full from top to bottom with meetings. You don't have time to take any breaks at all, and many a times you have to switch off your camera and have lunch during the same meeting, and you have absolutely no time. All those times where you used to go and have a coffee with other colleagues, etc., has completely vanished. So that's obviously on the lighter side, but if you look at weekdays, all days look the same between Monday and Sunday. All hours look the same. So it's it's not that, it's not been that easy actually. And I think going back to work might not be a bad thing after all, just on a lighter note.
And just to add one more point, actually, human beings are the most adaptable animal. I think there is a study, and I think all of us have come across that study. So as a human being, if there's a pandemic, we are working from home, I'm sure we are getting adapted to this. We are able to find a solution, how we can actually work around this. And I'm sure once we come back to work, I'm sure, things will again come back to the normal. But in a different way, there will be learnings. There will be learnings from the work from home, and those learnings have to be implemented once we come back to the normal situation.
Dr. Santosh, I couldn't agree with you more. And the other thing to think about is when and if you go back, because there's a lot of opportunity for people to continue the way they're working. And we will be, a lot of organizations are doing that. They're identifying positions which don't need to come to work office at all. You just continue working from home. And that way you save a lot of space, you save commute time, you have a better impact on the environment. So there are a lot of positives. The negative is that you miss out on the human touch. You miss out on those little around the corner gossip. You would miss out on some walking into somebody's office and say, hey, but let's have a cup of coffee. Or, that human touch is completely gone. And that actually is not for some people, they really, they have a problem with that, because they say that I don't have any friends. I don't talk to my friends, because the only thing I talk about is I talk on meetings, I talk on various discussions, but I'm not having a normal conversation with anybody.
So Anik, if I may end with a bit of, let's say, an analogy, which is way apart, right? Uh, Today we are forced in a way with the ecosystem in terms of work from home, at least some, right? But once people have experienced, it's a little bit like your thali, right? In any state, you will have the main course and you will have a side. It's the proportion that will vary, but you will eventually need both. And I think that ratio is never the same even within the family, right? I think organizations and people will evolve to find their balance when what you will end up is a choice rather than something that is thrust on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for everyone who contributed to the answer. I'd like to bring on Wazi from MBA 05 next.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks a lot for providing me a wonderful opportunity to interact with the esteemed panel consisting of eminent speakers. So at the outset, I would like to thank, my heartfelt gratitude to all the panelists for creating an effervescent environment and delivering an enlightening session. My question follows the comments of Bhavya ma'am in particular. She very beautifully enunciated the fact that how the organizations are now not compelled to prioritize when it comes to cross-country meetings or when it comes to bilateral interactions which involved previously travel from across the countries, one country to the other countries. So I would ask the panel to dwell a bit more on it and would request you all to compare how these virtual interactions compare vis-a-vis to in-person interactions when it comes to output efficacy. And finally, a comment on for us students to how to enhance the same.
Is it possible? Maybe I'll go first, and I'm sure the other panel members will add on. See, the biggest difference is when you're doing a face-to-face interactions, what happens is, so what happens in a face-to-face interaction is that you get to know the person a lot more, correct? You don't necessarily jump to the topic straight away. And that's the biggest gap, or that's what is actually missed out when you are in virtual sessions. And what happened, and you have to look at it in two ways, right? Now, in a situation like this, when you already have established relationships, it still works, right? Because you have that sense of trust. You have that ability to say, okay, I know the individual. It becomes that much more difficult if you are interacting with the individual for the first time. So then what you do, you put that extra effort to be able to first know the individual. Correct? So the effort that you need to do to be able to establish the relationship remains the same. It's just that the mechanism of how you're doing it is undergoing a change. The other element that happens in an environment like this is you become more sensitive to the other person's time. So as a result, how you conduct yourself and how do you necessarily engage with yourself with the other individual changes, correct? And that requires a lot more interaction between the two individuals to really set that standards, to set those thresholds, saying what's the way that you would want to interact with each other. Right? That's the way I would want to leave it, because the outcome that you want to get out of it is still the same, because you would need to know the individual, because you have to work together. It's about that relationship. It's about that trust. It's just the mechanics of how you make it work becomes far more responsible, and you have to keep checking it, right, more often. See, it's not so much even the virtual network. I'll give you another example. So even people, when they're coming back to work, right, you have to wear your face masks. So you can't read emotions of people. You can't read expressions of people, correct? Which otherwise you would. So it's not so much about, that's why I'm saying it's really about taking the time to understand people, to listen to the stories. So the patience level and ability to give ourselves more chance becomes that much more, or that becomes more required in this kind of an environment, what you would have otherwise taken for granted.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll add on to what Suchi said, and I completely agree with the bit that she said. I think the other thing that I want you to think about is that I think nobody is saying that virtual is better than face to face. I think that is not that is not the comparison, in the sense that at any point in time, meeting a person cannot be compared by meeting the same person virtually, like face to face versus virtual. Definitely meeting people face to face is better, right? You get to know them, you get to know, you get a certain vibe when you meet them, you get to know their body language, you know how they respond. So it's definitely better. So it's not a question of which one is better. I think what has happened is that with all of this virtual connect, and because we've been forced into this situation, and we've had to do it, I think organizations can rethink what are the bits that they can manage by doing virtually. So that discretion has become important now, because we've learned, and I think Dr. Santosh referred to it earlier as well, that you can do it, you can still do face to face meetings, but I think you can now make a choice to say what is absolutely critical that you want to do face to face only, because it's not like in the future when everything is back to normal, you're not going to do any face to face. You will of course do it, but then what are the parts that you need not do. I think it's about that, because in the past you would say that no, but this is critical, let's have a face to face meeting only. So I think that is also a lens that we should use. It's not about saying which one is more effective, because definitely face to face is much more effective for meeting people, for getting work done, for building relationships, to do all of that. And then to your second part of the question, which is that how do you make virtual meetings more impactful? Uh, I think everything that Suchi said, which is that, many a times when we connect virtually, what we think is that because we're blocking this, say 1 hour of time or 2 hours of time, or even if it is long periods of time, let's be very efficient about it. And, let's fill the agenda from, start to end with lots of topics that we need to cover. I think instead of that, you can also give yourselves free time to talk about yourselves, to talk about more informal stuff, and not just stick to the agenda, because then that makes it really mechanical. That I want to complete this agenda, and I've blocked so many people's time. I think everybody wants that slightly lighter touch in any meeting, whether it's virtual or face to face. So the principles remain the same. Then the second is that because you don't see people, you don't get to see their body language. The other thing is you have to sometimes be more sensitive in virtual environments than you would be in face-to-face environments. A joke which you could have made in a face-to-face environment because you knew the people, or because you knew everything, may not work in a virtual environment, because you'll actually not be able to make out how the person felt when you said that. So I think it also forces you to be slightly more sensitive in terms of what you say and how you say it, and the kind of especially lighter remarks that you make. So those two things I think are also critical.
So you would see that the views are as diverse as the panel members are. And I think keep the inquisitiveness on, right? And I think that's what I would say, right? I think it's fascinating. I think the range of views on this topic clearly reflects the range of views from the colleagues and communities that you would be serving, right? From absolute believers in X to the other extreme and everything in between. But the future is hybrid, at least for starters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Waji, let me ask you, you are from MBA 05 or 06?
Sir, I'm from MBA 05.
So let me ask you, actually, last year also you must have attended this kind of conclave, which was face-to-face, and you are attending this conclave actually in virtual. Do you see any difference in terms of the output?
Sir, I would not say that there is a whole lot of difference when it comes to the output. But sir, yes, the thing is that when you are certainly glued to a laptop screen, as compared to the feel and the atmosphere of the whole vibe that is generated there, when the panelists are present there and the students are present there, a bit of that is missing. But then again, we are living in a pandemic and we have to somehow accommodate that.
There you are.
Definitely. We all echo the same sentiments, Wazi. I'm interjecting to ask Nipun from MBA 6 to ask one last question.
Good evening, respected panel members. So my question is towards Ms. Suchishmita. So my question is that, ma'am, do you expect homeowners to rethink living in major cities because remote working is expected to be the norm? So just to put some context in that, there was a study from a Seattle, what we call them, land basically, who do business in real estate. They told that 27% of people were actually looking to move out of Seattle and move towards countryside. So do you expect the same thing to happen in India?
I would say yes, with a condition, with actually quite a few conditions, right? Now, if you really look at it, right, I'm sure you would have heard what TCS said that by 2025, they will actually have a large portion of their workforce actually working from home. Now, IBM has been doing that for the past 10 years, right? So I believe that's going to be the trend. I believe so. But for India, the success will really lie. How can you actually build in productivity while being remote? Correct? That's where our ability to look at networks, our ability to look at connectivity, our ability of the work ethics, or how do we necessarily build in again productivity coupled with predictability is going to be the key. But do I believe that's going to happen? Absolutely, yes.
So, Nipun, I think there is certainly a lot of positive press on what I would call as connected rural communities. So, if you want to book a beach cottage in Alibag and still be close to Mumbai, that could possibly one, right? And I think the challenge is the connectedness of rural communities to urban clusters. If you really look at it from an Indian lens, there is still a lot of, let's say, infrastructural bottlenecks and distance to cover. In some of the globally, in some countries, they have kind of narrowed that divide to making it more practical. So, but just like Suchi said, I have no doubts that directionally, proximity to city center may not matter as much as being connected is.
Thank you, Suchasmita and Arun, for answering that. A heartfelt gratitude to all the panel for answering all the questions for the students of IIM Amritsar. Since it is about creating memories at all times of life, so we have a little surprise for you. An after video from Media and PR cell of IIM Amritsar.
When Windows Explorer is visible.
Is it not playing?
It's playing, Robin, but we can only see the Windows Explorer screen.
Okay, wait.
We can't see the video.
You need to share, I think, the entire
VLC.
screen.
Yes,
yeah.
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 Thank you.
Opportunity.
Thank you, Media and PR Cell of IIM Amritsar, for creating such a wonderful montage of the enlightening session we had with our panelists. Now I would request Rajat to present a vote of thanks.
Sukangshi. Respected Director Sir, our honorable guest,
Rajat, wait, we can't hear you.
Rajat, we still can't hear you. Try again once. No.
No.
So, Kangshi, do you want to propose the word of thanks?
Yeah, sure. So, respected Director Sir, our honorable guest, faculty members, CNBC team, and my dear friends, it is an honor of Industry Interaction Cell to organize an event on such a visible scale. We would like to thank Director Sir for obliging us with his esteemed presence. We would also extend our heartfelt thanks to Professor Santosh Tiwari for trusting us with this huge responsibility. I propose a hearty vote of thanks to all the panelists who were a part of this event through which we can establish a foundation of future collaboration. I thank you all for enlightening us with their knowledge and experience. I'm sure the students will benefit from this discussion and will reflect upon this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And a lovely thank you to all the director, staff, the CNBC crew, and all the students, and most particularly the fellow panel members. Thanks for being a sport and bringing your whole self and the diverse views to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for adding
Thank
your...
you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are having bandwidth issues across. Sukangshi also couldn't finish the vote of thanks. Now I'd like to continue.
Okay.
I would thank the CNBC team for covering the event. Just a second. Yeah, I would like to thank the CNBC team for covering the event. We are all very grateful to the sponsoring organizations and the media members. This event would not have been a resounding success without the seamless efforts of the media and PR cell. We would also extend our gratitude to Team Ritvi for setting a relevant context for the event. We would also like to thank the IT team for managing and accommodating technical requirements of an event of this magnitude. At last, we would thank the students of MBA 05 and MBA 06 batch for their constant support and patience. Without you all, this event would not have been possible. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. I think this was great, and thank you to all the fellow panelists. It was lovely chatting with all of you. It was a great evening, actually, very well spent. So thank you all.
Bhavya, this is Professor Nagarajan. Thank you very much. I just turned my video off because I think in Amritsar there's a bandwidth issue. It's sort of raining and cloudy. By the way, we do have a common connection because my daughter used to work for PepsiCo in purchase and appliance. Okay, now she's working for Google. Okay. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all during our placement. I hope that you will help us. You have seen the caliber of the students that we have, and I do hope that you will sponsor and support us in not just this year, in the years to come. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Deepa, thank you, and I'll talk to you about something else later. I'll give you a call.
Sure, sure. Most welcome, Nagarajan.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, IIC.
Yes, sir, I've made you the host.
Atul, shall we leave?
Guys, can we end the meeting?
Surely, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rahul, can I end the meeting from my end?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
मीटिंग एंड कर दीजिए हाँ बंद कर दीजिए